When we're learning, we're engaged. We are learning machines. We want to not know how to do something, figure out how to do it, master it, and start all over again. And when we're learning, the reason we're engaged is that our brain is saying, this is so interesting, and we're getting all these fun squirts of dopamine. When we're not learning, we get bored, those feel-good effects go away. So if we want people to be engaged on the job, we need to give them an opportunity to learn. And when they're learning, because they're engaged, then your organization is going to be innovative and be able to manage through change. You design a job to maximize learning and engagement by recognizing that every single person in your organization is on a learning curve, including you. And that learning curve, the typical duration is about 4 years. And so you maximize learning and engagement by hiring people at the low end of the curve, where they don't really know what they're doing. And initially that might be a little bit frustrating, but it also means that as they put those pieces together, they're going to start to innovate and they're going to get excited, because then they're going to move into the steep part of the curve where they are very engaged because things are hard but not too hard, and easy but not too easy. And that's going to last about 2 to 3 years. At the low end of the curve, it's about 6 months. And then they get to the top of the curve and things will be now very easy. They're no longer enjoying the feel-good effects of learning. What you do with the people at the top of the curve, they're not necessarily innovating, but they're bringing people at the lower end of the curve along. And so you maximize the jobs by recognizing that everybody's on that learning curve. You've got about 4 years. At the beginning, they don't know what they're doing, then they do know what they're doing, then they don't know what they're doing, and then they jump to the bottom of a new learning curve. So they learn, they leap, repeat. You do that over and over and over again, and you're going to be maximizing the jobs for learning engagement for the entire workforce. So how do you manage people at different points along the curve? Well, it's very different depending on where they are. At the low end of the curve, you want to recognize they're going to be inexperienced. That means they're going to be kind of slow at what they're doing. So you manage them by being patient, by giving them a lot of direction, but also by valuing their inexperience. They're not blind through familiarity, so they're capable of asking questions like, why do you do it like this? And that can actually be very, very helpful because it opens the door to innovation. Why do we do it like this? Well, there might be a better way. So that's how you might manage people at the low end of the curve. People in the steep part of the curve, there are 2 things I would suggest you do. Number 1 is make sure you give them stretch assignments. Because they're in the steep part of the curve, they can do over in a short period of time. A lot happens, unlike at the low end where a lot of time passes and very little happens. In that steep part, it's easy to say, they're doing great, I'll just leave them be. But the way you're going to keep them engaged, the way you're going to keep them learning, the way you're going to drive innovation is to give them stretch assignments, give them constraints, give them challenges, give them friction, things that really push them. And the second thing it's important to do with people in that part of the curve is to make sure you appreciate them. They're not a problem child, everything's working, so it's easy to forget them, it's easy to ignore them. So you don't want to make them the problem child by ignoring them. So appreciate people on the steep part of the curve and give them real stretch assignments. And then at the top of the curve, the way you want to manage those folks are 2 things. Number 1, make sure they understand that you're not expecting them necessarily to innovate, but you need them to help bring other people up along the curve, the master, because they are in mastery, to the apprentice. But then also the most important thing is for them to understand that you have a plan. Either the plan is you're going to give them a really big stretch assignment that's going to push them back down into the steep part of the curve, or in 6 months to a year, you are going to make it possible for them to jump to the bottom of a new curve, because now that things are easy and their brains aren't enjoying the feel-good effects of learning, they're chunking things like you do with your brushing your teeth. They've got all this latent innovation capacity. And so in order to really unleash this, you're going to need them to jump to the bottom of a new curve. So they've learned, now it's time for them to leap and then repeat. That's how you manage people at the different points along the curve.